Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Dion Harris. I am 31 years old, and 6 weeks after giving birth to my daughter, Amara, I vanished from the life my husband thought he still controlled. I did not run because I was reckless. I did not disappear because I was unstable. I left because Everett Lawson, the man who promised to protect me, chose another woman while I was bringing his child into the world. By the time his key turned in the lock at 6:47 that morning, I was already hours away from Baltimore with my daughter sleeping in the back seat, a folder of evidence on the passenger seat, and my wedding ring sitting on the bathroom counter like the final period at the end of a sentence I should have ended sooner. Everett later told people he came home expecting the usual excuses to work. The business dinner ran late. His phone died. Traffic was terrible. Those were the lies he had used so often that even he sounded bored by them. But that morning, the house answered him with silence. The couch where I used to nurse Amara was empty. The blankets were gone. The nursery was stripped down to pale pink walls and nail holes. My closet had empty hangers swinging on the rod. His calls went straight to a disconnected number. He found the bank account next. I had taken exactly half of our joint savings, $24,310, not a penny more. His business accounts were untouched. His personal account was untouched. I took what was legally and morally mine, because I was not trying to destroy him. I was trying to survive him. Our life had looked expensive from the outside, but it was thinner than people thought. Everett drove a luxury car and hosted clients in restaurants with white tablecloths, yet much of that image was business credit, investor money, and his family's furniture. The joint savings looked large until I listed the costs. 2 months of rent, a security deposit, movers, a storage unit, a new phone, legal consultations, diapers, health insurance paperwork, and child care for an infant. After everything, I had enough for about 3 careful months. That was why I planned instead of screaming. A woman with a newborn does not get the luxury of falling apart for long. I had to gather proof, protect my daughter, and build a door where Everett thought there was only a wall. I found the first crack at 2 a.m. when Amara was 3 weeks old. She was nursing against my chest while I scrolled through the credit card statement with one thumb, too tired to think clearly and too hurt to stop looking. There was a charge from the Harbor View Hotel, a boutique place downtown, 5 days earlier on the night Everett claimed he was meeting investors in Annapolis. It was not for a conference room. It was for one suite. The minibar charge came after midnight. Room service listed champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries at 1:04 in the morning. My body reacted before my mind did. My milk let down so hard that Amara pulled back and fussed. I whispered, "I am sorry, baby girl. Mama is just having a moment." But it was not a moment. It was the beginning of the end. The next morning, I picked up Everett's phone when he left it charging near the coffee maker. I had never been proud of snooping, and even then my hand shook from shame. But trust had become a luxury, and I had a daughter to protect. His passcode had always been his mother's birthday. That morning, it failed. I typed it again, slower, and the phone rejected me. Maybe there were innocent reasons for changing a passcode, but combined with the hotel charge, his late nights, his new cologne, and the way he spoke warmly behind his office door to someone who was not me, it felt like confirmation. Still, I needed more than a feeling. I set the phone down and told myself I would not confront a skilled liar with only suspicion in my hand. The proof came 2 days later in the pocket of a charcoal suit I almost sent to the cleaners. It was another receipt from the Harbor View Hotel, folded twice and pressed against a business card from a woman named Vanessa Moore. The date on the receipt was the night Amara was born. I read it 3 times because my mind refused to accept what my eyes understood. I had called Everett at 11 at night that night, crying through contractions that were 5 minutes apart. He said he was wrapping up a meeting and would be at the hospital soon. He arrived at 3:18 in the morning, breathless and apologetic, blaming traffic and parking. The receipt showed a checkout at 2:47 in the morning, valet service at 2:51, and 2 champagne glasses charged to the room. I remembered that hospital room with a clarity that made my knees weak. A nurse named Mara had held my hand through a contraction and asked, "Do you want me to call him again?" I had said, "No, he is coming," because I believed my own husband would not miss the birth of our first child. When Amara crowned, I looked toward the door. When she cried for the first time, I looked toward the door again. Everett walked in later, eyes red, shirt wrinkled, and kissed my forehead as if he had fought his way through an emergency to reach me. I had felt sorry for him. I had comforted him. That receipt turned the memory poisonous. He had not been trapped in traffic. He had been checking out of a hotel room. As if that was not enough, his tablet lit up on the kitchen counter while I stood there holding the receipt. Everett had forgotten that his messages still synced there. Vanessa had sent him a photo from that same hotel elevator. He was kissing her temple, his hand resting on her waist, both of them reflected in the mirrored wall. Under it, she wrote, "You chose me while she was in labor, Everett. Do not pretend you are noble now." Then another message appeared with a hotel security, still she had clearly pulled from somewhere, stamped 12:36 in the morning, showing Everett leading her toward the elevators in the same suit he wore when he later walked into my hospital room. That message was personal, cruel, and impossible to explain away. I took photos of the tablet with my phone, emailed them to a new address, and printed everything before he came downstairs. Everett was at the kitchen table with his laptop when I placed the receipt, the printed photo, and Vanessa's message in front of him. His face moved through shock, fear, and calculation before settling into surrender. Everett said, "Dion, please do not do this right now." I said, "Were you with her while I was in labor with Amara?" He looked toward the living room, where our daughter slept in her swing, as if that tiny child could save him from answering. Everett said, "Yes, but it was not what you think." I did not raise my voice. I did not throw the receipt. I said, "You did not just betray me. You left me to bring our daughter into this world alone so another woman could feel chosen." He opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. I handed him his laptop and said, "Go to her. You already did when it mattered." He went to his mother's house that night and returned 5 days later with flowers, apologies, and the confidence of a man who believed a wife with a newborn had no practical way to leave. I let him believe that. During those 5 days, I called a family lawyer named Elaine Preston. She told me the truth without softening it. I could leave with Amara because no custody order existed, but if I crossed state lines, I needed to document why, file for temporary custody quickly, and avoid looking like I was hiding out of spite. So I prepared a sworn statement, saved hotel receipts, screenshots, and photos, wrote down every missed appointment and night Everett had been absent, and arranged for Elaine to file an emergency temporary custody petition in Maryland the morning after I left. I also left a written notice with my lawyer's contact information, not my address. Elaine also told me to stop thinking like a wounded wife and start thinking like a parent who might have to explain every choice to a judge. That changed everything. I made a binder with tabs, Amara's medical records, feeding notes, pediatric appointments, my bank transfer receipt, screenshots from Vanessa, hotel documents, and a timeline of Everett's absences. I wrote facts, not insults. I did not write that he was selfish. I wrote that he missed the hospital admission, the first pediatric appointment, 3 overnight feedings I had asked him to take, and every morning routine since we came home. I took photographs of the nursery before I packed it and of the items I removed. I wanted no one to say I stole, lied, or acted out of revenge. My pain was loud, but my plan was quiet. I told only 3 people before I left: my mother, Sylvia, my sister, Latrice, and Nicole, my oldest friend from college. I sent them the hotel receipt and Vanessa's message because I knew Everett would call them and twist the story if I did not prepare them first. My mother cried so hard I could barely understand her, but when she calmed down, she said, "Dion, do not let pain make you careless. Leave clean. Leave smart." That became my rule. I packed during Amara's naps and labeled boxes as donations because Everett never paid attention to anything that did not involve him. He was home less than ever, still guarding his phone, still pretending business required lipstick on his collar and hotel soap in his overnight bag. He did not notice the closet's thinning. He did not notice that the woman sleeping beside him had already gone cold. The night before I left, Everett kissed my forehead and said, "I have a business dinner tomorrow. Do not wait up." I said, "I will not." He smiled because he thought I meant sleep. The next evening, after he left in the cologne I had come to hate, I moved quickly. I loaded the boxes I had hidden in the garage behind old holiday decorations. I strapped Amara into her car seat. I placed copies of the evidence in a sealed envelope for Elaine. I put the old phone, the tablet photos, and the printed receipts into a small fireproof lockbox instead of destroying them. Evidence was protection. Evidence was memory when a liar tried to rewrite the past. Then I walked through the house one last time, removed my wedding ring, and set it gently on the bathroom counter. I did not throw it because I was not leaving in chaos. I was leaving in control. I drove to Philadelphia because it was far enough to breathe and close enough for legal appointments. My new apartment was a 600-square-foot third-floor walk-up with beige walls, brown carpet, and a kitchen barely wide enough for one person. The landlord, Donna, was a stern woman in her 60s who studied my references like she was hiring me for a government position. When the payment cleared, she handed me 2 keys and said, "First month and deposit are covered. If you need maintenance, text me. If you need help carrying that baby up the stairs, knock on 1A." I almost cried from the kindness of that ordinary sentence. The apartment was not beautiful. It smelled faintly of old paint and lemon cleaner. But when I locked the door behind me, the sound felt like freedom. That first night, Amara and I slept on a borrowed air mattress because the used furniture would not arrive until morning. She woke at midnight, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and again at 5:30. My back ached. My breasts hurt. My head throbbed from exhaustion. Still, when the sun came through the cheap blinds, I whispered, "We made it through day 1." I opened my banking app and stared at the number that had to become rent, groceries, diapers, legal fees, and child care. I had $21,800 left after the move and lawyer's retainer. It sounded like safety until I subtracted everything. Rent was $1,150 a month. Child care would cost more than rent if I found someone licensed to take a newborn. Freedom had a price, and I would have to earn every dollar of it. I applied to 15 jobs that first week and received 12 silences and 3 rejections. One recruiter said my 2-year career gap made me a risk. Another scheduled a phone interview during Amara's fussiest nap and ended it early when she heard crying in the background. She said, "Miss Harris, this position requires full-time availability." I said, "I understand. I have full-time availability." She said, "Perhaps call us again when your arrangements are more settled." I hung up, sat on the bathroom floor with Amara in my arms, and let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I washed my face, changed her diaper, and opened more job listings. I had not left one impossible life to surrender to another. Help came in practical pieces, not miracles. At the park, I met Nicole Avery, a mother with twin boys who lived in Building C. She introduced me to Miss Deborah, a licensed home day care provider 2 streets over. Miss Deborah did not usually accept babies under 3 months, but one infant family had delayed their start date, leaving a temporary opening. She required vaccination records, emergency contacts, a pediatrician form, a deposit, labeled milk bottles, and payment every Friday by 5 in the evening. Her rules were strict, and I loved her for it. Miss Deborah said, "I do not run on sympathy. I run on paperwork and consistency. But if you trust me with that baby, I will treat her carefully." I paid the deposit with hands that shook because it was more than I could spare, but it bought me the chance to work. The interview that changed everything was with a financial consulting firm run by Gabrielle Monroe. I wore my only good suit, pumped milk in the parking lot, and walked in with a smile I had practiced in the mirror. Gabrielle looked over my resume and said, "You have strong experience. Your gap is clear. What I need to know is whether you can meet the schedule, handle clients, and rebuild your technical rhythm quickly." I said, "Yes. I have child care arranged, references ready, and I have been reviewing current reporting standards every night." She studied me for a long moment. Gabrielle said, "I am not offering charity, Ms. Harris. I need someone accurate, disciplined, and hungry." I said, "Then you need me." For the first time in weeks, my voice did not shake. Gabrielle hired me as a financial analyst with 2 remote days after the first month. The salary was modest, but it was steady. On my first day, I dropped Amara at Miss Deborah's and cried in the car for 10 minutes before driving to the office. Then I sat at a second-hand desk, opened a messy client file, and remembered who I had been before marriage narrowed me into somebody's quiet support system. Numbers made sense. Balance sheets did not flatter, cheat, or disappear at midnight. By the end of the week, I found an error in a client's cash flow projection that saved the firm from presenting bad numbers. Gabrielle stood beside my desk and said, "Good catch." Those 2 words fed a part of me Everett had starved for years. Meanwhile, Everett discovered what loss felt like when it had witnesses. I know this because my mother, Elaine, and later court records filled in the pieces. He called my mother first. Sylvia said, "Do not ask me where she is. Ask yourself why she had to leave." He called Latrice, and she sent him one sentence with the hotel photo attached. "This is why." His own mother called him next, crying and furious. His lawyer warned him that if he turned the situation into a police matter, the receipts, the messages, and his absence as a father would become part of the record. The police told him I was not missing, that without a custody order I had not kidnapped my own child, and that his remedy was family court. For the first time, he could not charm his way around consequences. Everett hired a private investigator named Frank Delaney, and even that did not unfold the way he expected. Frank found the legal notice Elaine filed, confirmed that I had a lawyer, and learned through proper channels that Amara had been seen by a pediatrician and was safe. He did not hand Everett my address. He sent Elaine a formal welfare confirmation request instead, and when Elaine answered through the court process, Frank refunded part of Everett's fee. Frank told him, "Your wife is not missing, your child is not in danger, and I am not helping you bypass a court order that has not been issued." Everett was furious, but anger did not create rights he had not earned. The more he tried to pull me back by force, the more official records showed why I had left carefully. Everett filed anyway, because pride often looks like love to people who do not know the difference. At the temporary custody hearing, he wore an expensive suit and said he wanted his daughter back. Elaine asked him how many pediatric appointments he had attended. None. How many night feedings he had handled. None. How many diapers he had changed without me asking. He could not name one. The judge did not punish him for infidelity. The judge focused on parenting conduct, stability, and Amara's immediate needs. I was granted temporary sole physical custody, and Everett was offered supervised visitation in Maryland twice a month until a full evaluation could be completed. He looked stunned, as if the law had betrayed him by asking for facts instead of accepting his image. He attended the first supervised visit late. Amara cried in the visitation room because he held her awkwardly and smelled unfamiliar. The supervisor wrote that he appeared anxious, had limited knowledge of infant care, and checked his phone repeatedly. He missed the second visit because of a client emergency. He blamed traffic for the third and arrived with a stuffed bear still bearing a price tag. The reports did more damage than any speech I could have given. Everett wanted the title of father without the labor of becoming one. When his business partner, Trevor, learned how many meetings Everett had missed and why clients were complaining, he confronted him in front of their senior team. Trevor said, "You do not get to ruin your family and then bring the same recklessness into this company." Everett took a forced leave of absence that soon became a buyout negotiation. Vanessa did not disappear either. She posted a careful photo of herself at the Harborview Hotel, then deleted it when people began asking questions. A month later, she told Everett she was pregnant. He denied it until a paternity test after the baby was born proved the child was his son. That truth did not make him a romantic victim. It made him a man paying 2 lawyers, child support in 2 households, and the cost of choices he once thought had no price. His social circle stopped inviting him to dinners where wives sat beside husbands and people pretended character did not matter. His mother refused to host him for holidays unless he could speak about me and Amara without blaming me. The shame he tried to keep private became public enough that he had to face it in boardrooms, courtrooms, and family kitchens. At a small family dinner, his aunt asked where I was, and his mother answered before he could lie. She said, "Dion is gone because Everett made a choice he cannot decorate with excuses." He left the table, but the truth stayed behind him. That was the first public crack in the polished version of himself he had carried for years. My life was not suddenly easy because his became hard. Amara got sick during my 3rd week at work, and I had to leave a client meeting with a feverish baby pressed to my chest. A legal bill arrived the same day my car needed new brakes. I ate rice, eggs, and frozen vegetables for 9 straight days so I could pay Miss Deborah on time. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and realized I was $200 short for rent. I almost called my mother, then remembered I had a box of jewelry I never wore. I sold 2 bracelets Everett had bought me for anniversaries he later ruined, paid the rent, and felt no sadness watching them leave my possession. Some objects are not memories. Some are receipts for a life that cost too much. There were days I wondered if Everett had taken more from me than money could measure. I would stand in the grocery aisle comparing diaper prices and suddenly remember the marble kitchen I had left behind. I would watch couples at the park and feel anger rise so hot it frightened me. Then Amara would wrap her tiny hand around my finger, and the anger would become fuel instead of poison. Nicole Avery helped by refusing to treat me like a tragedy. She said, "You need groceries, sleep, and a friend who will tell you when your shirt has spit up on it." My mother visited once a month with freezer meals and church announcements, and Latrice sent small amounts of money even when I told her not to. I was not alone. I was learning the difference between independence and isolation. Gabrielle noticed my exhaustion but did not pity me. She challenged me. She gave me harder files, corrected my reports until they were sharp, and asked what I wanted beyond survival. One Friday evening, after everyone else left, she said, "You are working like someone trying to prove she deserved to be rescued. Stop that. Build as if you already belong here." That sentence stayed with me. I enrolled in 2-night courses toward a Master of Business Administration, one class at a time, paid through a mix of scholarships, employer assistance, and sleep I did not have. I studied after Amara went down, sometimes with my laptop balanced beside bottles and folded laundry. There were nights I cried over spreadsheets. There were mornings I walked into work anyway. The first time I led a client presentation, one of the owners looked past me toward Gabrielle and asked whether someone more senior would be joining us. The old Dion might have shrunk. The new one opened the file, turned the screen toward him, and said, "I prepared the analysis. I can walk you through every number." By the end of the meeting, he was asking for my recommendations instead of my title. That one mattered because it was not handed to me. It was earned in a room where I had to remind people, including myself, that my life had not reduced my competence. Afterward, Gabrielle smiled and said, "There she is." I carried that sentence home like a paycheck. Still, growth did not erase fear overnight. Sometimes I woke before dawn convinced Everett was outside the apartment, even though he had no address and no right to appear there. Sometimes I replayed Vanessa's message until my stomach turned. Healing was not a straight line. It was putting Amara in her crib, locking the door, checking the lock once instead of 5 times, and choosing sleep. It was learning to answer Elaine's calls without shaking. It was signing my own lease renewal, filing my own taxes, and looking at my reflection without seeing the wife he had humiliated. Little by little, I stopped measuring my life by what he had done to me. I started measuring it by what I did next. The full custody evaluation took months. A court-appointed evaluator interviewed me, Everett, our families, the visitation supervisor, and Miss Deborah. She reviewed pediatric records, messages, financial documents, and Everett's missed visits. No therapist's private notes were dragged into court. No dramatic trick was needed. The ordinary record was enough. Everett had been absent when presence mattered. I had been consistent when consistency was hard. At the final hearing, Everett's lawyer advised him to accept reality. He signed a consent order giving me sole legal and physical custody, with any future visitation requiring a step-up plan, parenting classes, and proof of reliability. His child support obligation remained separate and enforceable. When the judge asked if I understood the order, I said, "Yes, Your Honor." My hands were steady on the table. After court, Everett waited near the hallway windows. He looked thinner, older, less polished. Everett said, "I never thought you would really leave." I said, "That was the problem." He looked at the floor. Everett said, "I am sorry for the hotel, for Vanessa, for missing her birth. I was selfish. I wanted those words once. I would have begged for them when I was pregnant and lonely, when I sat awake listening for his car, when I delivered our daughter with nurses holding my hands. Now the apology landed like rain on a house that no longer leaked. I said, "You can be sorry. That does not make you safe." Then I walked away before his regret could become another room I was expected to live in. 3 years passed in small victories. Amara learned to walk in that beige apartment, wobbling from the couch to my open arms. She called Miss Deborah Deba and Gabrielle Miss Boss, because she heard me speak of both so often. I was promoted to senior analyst, then manager. Nicole Avery became the kind of friend who had a spare key and knew when to appear with soup. My mother visited often, filling my freezer and scolding me for forgetting to rest. I finished my Master of Business Administration in slow, stubborn pieces. At graduation, Amara sat on my mother's lap in a yellow dress and shouted, "That is my mama," when I crossed the stage. I laughed so hard I almost cried, because for once the tears had nothing to do with grief. Everett tried to re-enter my life several times, usually when his own became uncomfortable. He sent birthday gifts through Elaine until I asked that everything go through the approved parenting communication system. He wrote letters about regret and becoming a better man. Sometimes I read them. Sometimes I did not. He had supervised visits for a short period, then missed enough of them that the step-up plan stopped moving. Eventually, his role in Amara's life became financial and distant by his own inconsistency. I did not poison her against him. I also did not polish the truth into something prettier. When she asked why he did not come around, I said, "Some adults have love in their words, but not enough steadiness in their actions. You are deeply loved here, and that will never depend on him." 5 years after I left, I attended a finance conference in Chicago as a speaker. Everett was there because his new consulting employer had sent him as a vendor representative. It was not fate. It was industry overlap and a printed program with my name in bold. He found me after my panel, standing beside Gabrielle, while younger analysts asked questions about rebuilding careers after interruptions. He waited until the crowd thinned, then said, "Dion, you were incredible up there." I thanked him the way I would thank any former acquaintance. His eyes moved to the conference badge that listed me as Director of Strategic Finance. Everett said, "I heard you are doing well." I said, "I am." There was nothing small about those 2 words. He asked if we could get coffee. I agreed only because it was in a public hotel lobby with colleagues nearby, and my flight was not until evening. He told me Vanessa had moved to Dallas with their son after years of conflict. He told me he was paying support, rebuilding professionally, and still trying to forgive himself. Everett said, "I lost everything." I looked at him for a long moment and said, "No, Everett. You gave away what mattered and called it losing when someone finally picked it up and carried it somewhere safe." His face tightened, not in anger but recognition. He had no answer. He did not ask me to come back. Maybe some part of him finally understood that the woman who once waited by the window did not exist anymore. A year later, Gabrielle offered me a partnership track, and 2 years after that, I became chief executive officer of the consulting firm when she stepped into an advisory role. It sounds sudden when told in one sentence, but it was not sudden at all. It was thousands of early mornings, late nights, corrected reports, difficult clients, missed sleep, careful budgets, and choosing discipline when bitterness would have been easier. I bought a small house outside Philadelphia with a porch, a narrow garden, and a bedroom Amara painted lavender. On the day we moved in, she ran from room to room shouting, "This is ours." I stood in the doorway holding the keys and remembered the bathroom counter where I had left my ring. Back then, I thought I was walking away from my whole life. I had actually been walking toward it. Wesley Grant never showed up at my private home like some careless romantic gesture. In fact, I did not allow any man near my home until trust had been built slowly and openly. Wesley was a compliance attorney I met through work, and his first message came through my professional email after Gabrielle introduced us on a client project. He was patient, consistent, and respectful of every boundary I named. When I told him I had a daughter, a custody order, and no interest in chaos, Wesley said, "Then I will move at the pace of your peace." I did not need him to save me. That was why I could appreciate him. Love felt different when I was not begging it to prove I mattered. On Amara's 8th birthday, we held a party in the backyard of the house I owned. My mother grilled chicken on the patio. Nicole Avery's twins chased balloons across the grass. Gabrielle brought a stack of books because she believed every child needed a library before they needed more toys. Wesley helped set up tables, then stepped back when Amara ran to me with frosting on her cheek and said, "Mama, this is the best day." Across town, Everett mailed a gift through the parenting system and sent a message that said, "Please tell her I love her." I did. I never had to lie to my daughter to be free. But when she blew out her candles, his absence did not hollow the day. The space he left had been filled long ago with people who showed up. That night, after everyone left and Amara fell asleep surrounded by ribbons and new books, I sat on the porch and opened the journal I had kept since the apartment. I wrote, 8 years ago, I drove away with my baby, my evidence, and just enough money to be terrified. I thought survival was the best I could hope for. I was wrong. I built a life that does not require pretending. I built a home where love is steady. Everett lost the wife who would have crossed oceans for him and the daughter who might have known him if he had chosen presence over pleasure. I lost the illusion that betrayal was something I had to endure quietly. What I gained was better than revenge. I gained myself, my child's peace, and a future no one can enter unless they come with clean hands. I closed the journal and looked at the warm light spilling from my own windows. Everett once came home to an empty house and finally understood what he had thrown away. I came home to a full one and understood that I had lost nothing worth keeping. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.